Ladies and gentlemen, this is David Mirikitani with another episode of Weighing In, brought to you by USA Wrestling, the national governing body for wrestling in the United States, and by Nike Wrestling. Go to athleteps.com for all of your Nike and USA Wrestling branded gear. Joined by Mark Ostrander Grant Turner. We will get to this at the end of the show, but GT, congratulations on a great tournament at Reno.
Thanks, brother.
Always great to see your friends, and in this case, your fellow podcasters, succeed. You did a lot of traveling. I came back from Stillwater. We will talk shortly about the Oklahoma State duel with Virginia Tech. Let's start out with pretty much the match of the year that counted. We can take out the Kekheisen-Starachi match because technically it didn't count because it's an all-star match. But in terms of individual matches, Keegan O'Toole, Levi Haynes, for some people, I cannot imagine the don't know result. It was 1-1. O'Toole gets a takedown in overtime. Mark, I had a buddy of mine that was pinging me with results on the plane as I was coming home from Stillwater. Came home and watched the replay, but my understanding is you watched it live. Your thoughts watching it, not knowing how it was going to turn out?
For being a 1-1 match, going into overtime, there was a ton of action. These are two really good wrestlers. And I think Keegan learned a lot from the freestyle time they wrestled, how strong Haynes is. And I think he was able to adjust to that a little bit better. Haynes was in 2 or 3 times really deep with that high crotch. And Keegan just wrestled really smart. Did kind of the opposite of what he wanted to do, you could tell. He didn't want to do the splits on the edge of the mat because he would have got pulled back in and probably taken down. So he stepped over the top instead and, put Haynes in an unfamiliar position. So I'm sure Haynes is going to learn for that match. I'm sure Keegan's still learning from it. I'll be surprised if those two don't wrestle in the finals of the national tournament, though. It was a good match.
So it's interesting you say that because Dean Hamady absolutely boat raced Lenny Wollock.
Yep.
Like, I was with my parents this weekend and sitting with them for the OSU v Tech duel. And I said to my dad on paper, hey, this is the best match of the night besides 125, which ended up not being very close either. I think both matches were, the 174 is 3 versus 4. 125 was 3 versus 4, 5, or 6, depending on whose rankings. And GT, I think you may have saw that match because I don't think you guys maybe you were at the hotel or something, but Hamady beat him 20-4. Actually, it's probably worse than that because they let him go to get it, but he tech-falled him, and he won every single scramble. The argument that I hear why Hamady isn't a contender is he kills everybody that's not as good as him and doesn't beat the guys above him. But GT, there's an argument that he's with David Taylor, he's with Tyler Caldwell, he's with Jimmy Kennedy, he's with Thomas Gilman, he's with Dustin Plott, he's with Luke Serber. Do we think there's a chance that Hamady has jumped to these other two guys' levels, or do we still feel like there's kind of a margin there?
Well, I think that, they call it a season for a reason. That he's got more time and, he's not going to run into anybody until the duel. So he's going to get a shot at O'Toole twice, more than likely.
Yeah.
So he's going to have an opportunity to be able to prove that. He will not have an opportunity to wrestle Haynes, I don't believe, this season.
You are 100% correct.
So I think when you take a look at his ability to he's going to get shots. He's going to get looks at O'Toole. So I like having to see my competition prior to the national tournament rather than just I don't know anything about this kid. Even though there's tons of film and all that stuff, but when you actually put your hands on somebody, it's completely different.
Yeah.
So I think that he is very much in that same class with those guys until proven otherwise. I don't think that he's wrestled those guys prior to this.
He wrestled Keegan 2 years ago at the All-Star meet and lost 2 or 3 takedowns to none. So that's the argument where he's not in that level. But GT, he looks so good. He looks so different. he was always super high pace and kind of helter-skelter, but he's finishing cleaner. He's getting the legs cleaner. It just feels like he's Hamady 2.0.
Well, I also, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like, 65 versus 74 could be another factor for Hamady having a little bit more success potentially.
He's small.
Yeah, maybe there's a little bit of and I know that both you guys have coached athletes where it's like, well, we'll just quit cutting weight, go up a weight, like feel good, maybe work out a little bit more, like focus on technique.
We told guys to go and said they go to class instead.
Yeah, we didn't. Weight was not one of the conversations we normally had with our
kids. Go to class and stop dieting. I'm having flashbacks. Yeah. So here's what I think is really interesting about the outcome of the match. I mean, people are talking about the step over was the leg in, still shot versus video. I've kind of started looking at wrestling a little differently. Like, basically, like, are these guys in the same tier? Like, if they wrestled 10 times, would it be somewhere between 6'4" and 4'6"? And I think Keegan and Haynes are that.
Yep.
So and for me, it's almost easier in my mind to sort it out. But here's what is really interesting for Dean Hamady. He controls his path to the number 1 seed now. Because if he beats Keegan beat Levi. And the number 1 seed really matters at that weight because right now the 4th ranked guy is Wolak, who is not in that tier. Like, I think it's fair to say that there's a tier 1 and a tier. We don't know if Wolak starts tier 3 or 2. That's what we don't know. We don't know if Hamady belongs with those guys or if he's on his own island. So, you know what? I'm going to go to Oklahoma State, Virginia Tech next because it leads right into something. I had a chance to talk to Pearsall Saturday night, and I said, what's really weird about your team is your 3 best guys, which, and this is just an opinion, but Hamady, Plott, Hendrickson are all at weights where there are two national champions at the weight. We talked about who Hamady has, but Plott's got Parker Keckheisen and Carter Sirachi, and the greatest American hero has Gable and Kirkfleet. If those guys were at a different weight class, you're like, they're going to win the weight. Like, 197 is wide open right now. I'm not saying there's not really good wrestlers there, but if you were doing school ground pick, the 6 guys I named would all go ahead of the first 197-pounder. I understand Ferrari won nationals, but it's a long time ago, and there's a lot of questions, and he's at a school with not a lot of training partners. 157, ton of weight, ton of question marks. So, and the only other weight that might be worse for those guys if they were 141 with Aliras and Mendez. If you put these guys at 125, they'd probably be 10-point favorites, so it's just wild how that works out. Anyway, so the Oklahoma State Virginia Tech duel. Here's what we had right. We all picked 149 right. None of us had a fall, but we got that right. All of us had 65 right. All of us had 84 right. And all of us had heavyweight right. Mark was the only one that had a pin, but we at least got him right that way. I was wrong about Andy Smith over Serber. He lost in overtime. GT had Wolak. GT and I had Fish over Hippolito in, I think, the most entertaining match of the night. Mark had Eddie Ventresca, and Mark had Latona. I had McGonigal, and McGonigal didn't wrestle, so if we were doing our wings bets, that just gets thrown out the window. And then, Grant, you had the team score the closest, so congratulations. There's probably some hot sauce in it for you somewhere the next time I see you, for sure.
Let's go.
No wings, just hot sauce, Grant.
No. Yeah, no, I'm cool with it. I'll just put it on some fries or something.
Little Frank's Red Hot for the win, for sure. So to pivot back to Penn State, it's unbelievable. So this weekend at Collegiate Duals, Braden Davis beats Nasir. Nasir doesn't pick down again. Same thing with Lucas Bird. And it's funny because I said to Willie this weekend, auto down is kind of a thing of the past now with 3-point takedowns. But I don't think auto down's a thing of the past if the score is 0-0 or 1-0 when it's your choice. I think you kind of got to pick down and get your point. So he's going to drop in the rankings pretty severely. Our guy at Matt King's pulled up the rankings. We're recording this on December 23rd, which is a Monday evening. So that we'll go through the rankings. But this week is what it is. Next week we'll record on New Year's Eve, but the results for Midlands and Soldier Salute is impossible to have been integrated into the rankings. Mark, when you and I did this together, Cliff Keen weekend, this time with Scuffle and these other two tournaments and conference tournaments were the 3 worst times of the year to be doing rankings. So we should shout out these guys that are still enduring that process and doing it with a smile on their faces. Let's see.
Well, I wanted to say one thing about the duel between Oklahoma State and Virginia Tech.
Okay.
And we had talked about this a few podcasts ago. What effect was David going to have on this team early on? And I think we were all 3 impressed how they wrestled out in Vegas as a team, placed 10 guys. And, nobody had a really off day. They may have lost some matches they thought they should have won, but everybody came back and, wrestled really well in the wrestlebacks, which is a rarity these days, that every one of your guys will come back and wrestle strong. And they just absolutely beat the tar out of Virginia Tech. And it wasn't close. And the matches we thought were going to be close, or I thought were going to be close, competitive, were major decisions. And they went out and got the majors at the end of the match. It's not like they got it early. They went out and recorded those. He's made a big difference at Oklahoma State.
Say the last sentence again louder for the people in the back. They went and got the points late. Spratley late gets a 3 and a 2. Dean Hamady lets a guy go where if he rides him out, he wins on attack just to get another takedown. Plotz goes late to get points. Tegan Jamison goes late to get points. Caleb Fish was one takedown away from getting teched and brought it all the way back to 20-15. I mean, he lost the match, but you got to like it. Cam Amin was finally scoring points late. Serber wins the scramble in overtime where he was dead. I mean, he was dead in the water on that scramble. So if you're an optimist, there's a ton to be optimistic about. If you're a pessimist, here's what you say. They're doing the same thing they did last year, basically. Way better Cliff Keen. But they're winning every duel. They're still, a coin flip in a duel with Iowa. And let's see how they do at the Big 12s and the Big Show. I will say this. They are a prohibitive favorite to win the Big 12s. Mizzou is way down. I mean, way down. And Iowa State's banged up. Correct me if I'm wrong, but if you look at the team rankings, you don't really see anybody else that's really close to them. If you look at the rankings, Northern Iowa is the next highest team, and they don't have enough depth to beat Oklahoma State in a middle-sized tournament, small to middle-sized tournament.
No.
Oklahoma State's going to place all 10 guys in the top 5 at the worst at the Big 12s.
I'm predicting top 3.
I'll take that bet. I'll take that bet. Said somebody finishes 4th or worse. For sure I will. 33 alone. Whitcraft's not ranked in the top 3, so he's going to have to out-wrestle it. Same thing at 49. So I'll bet you wings on that. You want it?
Sure, why not?
Yeah. Say it with your chest, Ostrander.
I don't have any problems.
But the fact that that's the debate tells you how strong they are. That it's a possibility. And you're not crazy. Just have to wrestle a little over their heads at a couple weight and just wrestle where they are. They're going to be seeded 1, 2, or 3 in 8 or 9 of the weights. Feel super comfortable predicting that. I will say this. And GT, you get to go to any duel in the country you want to. The energy is pretty interesting there right now. A little more smoke and mirrors. The big screen behind them running out. Elevated stage. A.L. Hazlip absolutely crushing the read with the history of the Oklahoma State program and everything else. And I think 7 or 8 of our high school teams were there for Hall of Fame duels. And the talk in the morning was not who they were going to wrestle. The talk in the morning was how cool that duel was the night before. And it's a pretty impressive, a pretty powerful recruiting tool. You go in there and kick the crap out of a top 7 team at worst and kind of dancing on some people while doing it. It's pretty powerful. So shout out to them. I did get to meet Dave. He goes by Dave, right? GT, Dave Taylor, David's dad.
Yeah.
Yeah. I met him Saturday night. He was a cool guy. Got a chance to meet with Pearsall for like an hour. So shout out Brandon Mason, who spent 8 hours smoking pork butt, and good Lord, it was worth it. And I posted a picture, and Jason Bryant posted a 3-word response, best basement ever. And he's got a very cool whiskey bar in the basement, the lounge chairs, the TV, the whole thing. So there's a lot of camaraderie going down there. So Oklahoma State's got really good energy right now. What's interesting to me is this. They're kind of a coin flip if you go through Iowa in the dual meet, depending on teamer and stuff. But if you put them against Penn State, I think they're slightly favored to win. They're favored to win 33. I'm sorry. They're not. They're not. They might not win a match. Spratley, they're favored. Davis over Whitaker. I mean, you go up and down the lineup. It's crazy because the 3 guys I was talking about are all behind national champs. And then like Amin's got Messenbrink. Serber's got Barr, which at the beginning of the year was a toss-up. Now it's not. So, I mean, 41 is number 3 against number 4, but in terms of what they've already done in their career, it's not close. Multiple-time All-American versus a guy who's never placed. Spratley lost to Luke the last time they wrestled. Now, Spratley's a better folk styler because he's literally a cowboy on top. He rides hard.
Yeah.
But I mean that duel on paper is not close. A coach Saturday night asked Pearsall the question we all want to know: how close are we getting to Penn State, Oklahoma State in a duel? And he said, in order for that to happen, we will have to go to Penn State first. So that's a direct quote. For those of you only listening, GT gave the nod of knowledge. Like, that's how it works. When you're the one that spins off, you got to go back home first. So I hope it happens. I think that's the duel everybody, just in general, those 2 programs, people want to see. People want to see the handshakes and everything else as much as they do the matches. So pretty interesting there. Let's go back and look at the rest of the schedule from last week. So we'll go cover a lot of these in the rankings, but either one, I guess, Mark, I'll go with you first. Any other takeaways from the collegiate duels? Iowa State had some interesting things on day 1. Ohio State, Karchela's back. Then Little Rock, wrestling Mizzou, Cornell, and State. Your thoughts on those matches? Yeah,
I'm blown away with how good Penn State is, because we thought they would not, well, at least some people here in this group here didn't think they'd probably place at 33. And right now he's already knocked off 2 kids that are in the top 6. So
did you pick them to place?
I did.
Okay.
I picked all 10 of them to place, and I think you thought I was nuts because I picked Barr to get 4th.
You picked Nagao/Davis to take 5th. I had him 8th. GT had him 8th. I had him in the round of 12. And then you had Barr 4th.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
It's like you were talking earlier. Right now, if they wrestled Oklahoma State, I would have a hard time picking them to win a match right now. And that's just how good Penn State is. I'm starting to think if Iowa wrestled Penn State, they're only going to win maybe 1. They're probably favored in 1, 2 matches at tops. that they're actually favored in. Maybe 3 with 97, but Barr's wrestling really well. So I think there's such a huge gap right now because Drake's already won at 25. So you'd have to say he's a favorite. And I think Teamer would be a favorite over Kasich if he's healthy.
Well, we can use the Matt King's graphic here. We don't need to talk about it. We can just be about it. So here's Penn State, Oklahoma State. Just for people that want to see it. Lillidow is 11, Spratley's 2, so he would be the underdog. But 133, it's 8 over 16, 41, 3 over 4, then 2 over 18, 2 over 14, 1 over 7, 2 over 3, 1 over 3, 6 over 11, 2 over 3. Now, a bunch of those are really close on paper, but like if you go, hey, you need to win 5 matches to win the duel. Spratley has to beat Luke. Tegan's got to beat Bartlett. Hamady has to beat Levi. Plott has to beat Strachey. And Hendrickson has to beat Kirkfleet. Like, that's absurd. That's the split.
Yep. Now put Iowa up against Penn State.
I'm on it, Mark. So if people are looking, the Iowa matches that are favored: Ayala against Davis, Teamer over Kasich, but that's 1 versus 2, and Buchanan over Barr, that's 1 versus 6. So, and obviously a fully functional Teamer I would pick. I'm not sure about that. Do any of you guys remember, and I can wrestle stat this while we're doing this, do any of us remember how Braden Davis did versus Drake Ayala last year? Because I'm assuming they had to wrestle, right?
Drake beat him
Twice or just in the duel?
I think he just wrestled him in the duel because Brayton won the Big Tens and Drake lost to the ex-Northwestern guy that went to Michigan.
The Augustino?
Yeah.
Okay. So, GT, when you look at this, what are your thoughts on, Penn State, Iowa, or Penn State, Oklahoma State?
Well, I mean, I think you kind of get a little bit of a preview of what like Oklahoma State did to Virginia Tech. And Virginia Tech's a top 10 team.
Yeah.
And, basically had some very, very tough matches against them. And once again, in a dual format, you can be close, but also like in the dual score, not have it be close. If you look at the Penn State, Oklahoma State thing, when you're looking at it and it's like 3 versus 4, 2 versus 3, 1 versus 3, those are like, marquee matchups, right? And I think that probably in a lot of those matchups where it's, 1 versus 3 or 2 versus 3 or 3 versus 4, they're like either reigning NCAA finalists or champs up against guys that are maybe like not there yet. Like Plott's never been in against Strachey yet, but like that's gonna be a great match to watch because it's gonna be really competitive. I think also same thing with Kirkfleet and Hendrickson, Bartlett and Tegan Jamison. Like these are matchups that you want to see. But I think if you look at the Iowa duel versus Penn State, Iowa has a lot more of the other way around where they're already favored with those matchups against the Penn State.
Yeah.
Roster, where it's the other way around for Penn State over Oklahoma State in whatever it was, 9 out of 10.
Yeah, it's 9 out of 10 versus 7 out of 10. You feel relatively comfortable that Drake can win. If Teamer's 100%, I think you feel fairly comfortable. Buchanan is not as spicy of a story as Barr, but, ton of credentials. The Strachey Gabe Arnold match is just probably worth the price of admission just for the Twitter talk that went on between those two. But what's bonkers is we're talking all year about how good Iowa's been in the portal and Oklahoma State's been in the portal. And really what it comes down to is it's not close. And we see that in the dual meet or the tournament projections. But you look at the dual meet projections, you're like, good Lord. And I was at a dual meet tournament, obviously, all weekend. Dual meets are awesome in terms of excitement and projecting and things like that, where tournaments are like, Grant was at a tournament this weekend, and like, hey, if I'm rooting against Grandview, like, well, I need the Oregon State guy to knock off Greg Hagan, as an example, something like that. How about me pulling a Grandview wrestler out of the hat? Correct name, by the way, GT. Boy. So, but those kind of examples, right? Where if it's head to head, and it's Merrimack again, we gotta beat 5 guys and figure it out from there. So it's interesting. And, Penn State, they graduate some dudes, but man, they're lined up. Like, the question people are asking there is who's going to be in their 30 when they have to go to roster caps. It's not like, do they have enough? It's like they have too much depth, which is insane. So, anyway, so we were kind of talking about collegiate duels. Little Rock beats Mizzou. That's fairly historical for Little Rock. They've now beaten Arizona State and Mizzou. And I think anybody who's ever seen a program be built, you try to win duels first, and then you start climbing your way up the tournament. What's bonkers is Little Rock beat Mizzou, and they will fall in the rankings because Stephen Little lost to Barr and Nasir Bailey lost to Braden Davis. And Mark is nodding if you're only listening. And that is because Mark has done rankings for a long time, and it's how it works. So Mizzou is banged up right now. Cam Steed got a concussion. Rocky Elam hasn't wrestled all year. Noah Certain had to medically retire. It's tough.
It's a bad year because he's done such a great job with that program, that head coach there.
Brian Smith.
Yep. And you hate to see any team go through what they're going through right now, but they're just injuries. They're just devastated. And, if you think about it, Iowa State's going through a lot of the same things Missouri's going through. Some of their best kids are not getting a chance to wrestle right now. So it was nice to see their heavyweight go back out and wrestle this weekend and get a match in. And so I think they're going to probably be okay. They got to figure a way to win at 97 because that right now is kind of where I'm surprised that they're struggling so much because I thought he'd come in and do a little bit better.
Christian Carroll?
Yep.
You watch, what his problem is? He's short. Like, he's too short. He actually needs to get to 84. And he was a heavyweight. But, like, when those guys go splits, he can't finish. And when he goes splits, they just take him down. And he can't ride because he's too short. Like, it's not the only thing, but that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
It's super simple. Like, people were asking me this weekend about Forrest versus Bassett. I'm like, if you think they're the same, one will be better on top just based on length. Because they're not just going to turn guys over like they are in high school when they get to college. So, yeah. And so, piece of bad news, Dylan Ragason's out for the year. He now becomes, I'm sure, a medical redshirt candidate. We're going to talk about redshirting here in a minute in the junior college rule. And so, getting redshirts now doesn't feel like it's a problem anymore. I think Ragason's a guy that you absolutely love. Like, I was talking to the high school coaches. I took some out Thursday night, some out Friday night, some out Saturday night. And they were talking about how, like, his interview, talking about Jan Smith and stuff after the Dayton Fix match, like, unless you're from Oklahoma State, you like that guy. Like, he's just got a lot of blank and vinegar in him. He's just got a lot of energy, and he's a tough kid. He's one of Izzy Martinez's all-time favorites. So that's sad. GT, why is Iowa State bringing Bastida back? And maybe I'll contradict myself. Maybe he doesn't want to wrestle college anymore and wants to get to freestyle. But if he wrestled college one more year, he would be a major favorite at 285 next year, right?
Yeah, if you just look at who's going to be gone in the 2026 NCAA wrestling tournament at heavyweight, it thins out pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Now the top 3 guys are gone for sure.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said about what his mindset is, or what he wants to do. Once again, in order to continue to wrestle at the Division I level, you still got to go to school and be eligible, and you still got to do all the things that a student athlete has to be able to do. And I don't know where he's at in his degree option. Would he have to be a grad student? And would he have to take some? I don't know. But I think if we just look at it from the wrestling angle, it makes a lot of sense for him to give some thought to potentially coming back for another year.
Willie Saylor said to me, he goes, Iowa State's not winning a team trophy next year or this year. And he goes, they probably would win a team trophy next year. When if you think about it, they have Swiderski, they have Chittum, they'll have Meza or Christian Carroll, or not Christian Carroll, Christian Castillo, excuse me, the Frost brothers, Echemendia. I mean, pretty salty group. If you go on the rankings at heavyweight,
Pinero Johnson's back next year.
Pinero, yeah. Gable Sr., Kirkfleet Sr., Wyatt Sr., Bastida would be back, Gadali Sr., Yaroslav Sr., Schultz Sr., Treffin Sr., Luke Luffman Sr., Josh Heinzelman Sr. The only guys back in the top 12 are Trumbull and Feldman. And then you got the young guys like Mullen, Keeter, Pitzer, and then more seniors. This weight gets decimated with graduation, like absolutely killed. Younger Bastida was favored to make the finals last year. You know, he wrestled bad, hurt his hand, whatever, but he beat Wyatt Hendrickson at the Big 12s.
Yeah.
So, I mean, listen, those guys know better than I do, and they're coaches, and it's their room and every day and all that stuff. But on the surface, there seems like an argument for him to consider redshirting. But they pulled him out. They said he was going to be out 4 to 6 weeks, and they pulled him back in. Pinero weighed in at like 150 and had to wrestle 165. Excuse me, because he's on his dissension plan down. So with Chittum coming in. So, and then the Cuban wrestled at 33. So, I mean, GT, what do you think? Do we think Frost goes back down, or do we think the Frost that placed bumps his brother out of the spot at 41? Like, if you had to guess, what are you thinking there?
I think Evan will stay at 33. Determining what they want to be able to do at 41 with Jacob is definitely a conversation to be had. I also just think having I'm just going to call him OC. I don't know if that's the proper way to like do it. I'm just going to abbreviate it. But like, you know, getting him some exposure into like folk style and getting some actual collegiate bouts and getting some, you know, some good duels underneath what he's got going on. Sky's the limit for him whenever he decides that, you know, folk style is going to be, you know, more comfortable for him. But I think you keep Evan at 33 because I think that he's proven that that's a better weight class for him. But we'll see. We'll see what Iowa State does. I think that they have a lot of different things going on with, I don't know, what they want to look like this year and what they want to look like next year.
Yeah. I mean, they're dealing with a lot of stuff there. I mean, it's interesting too. Like if you look at 197, like we're talking about Christian Carroll, and right now he's ranked 22, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 of the guys ahead of him graduate. So, I mean, there's good guys coming in like Cody Merrill and things like that, but if he finishes round at 24, all those guys graduate, he's a bubble round guy next year, just by people leaving. So, and then Meyer Shapiro came back and absolutely destroyed Ed Scott. Like, and Karchla's back and looks good.
Bouzakis didn't wrestle this weekend, though, 33.
Davino did.
Is that going to be?
I don't think that's a thing.
Right.
I think, I mean, it makes sense. If you think they're close, and again, I don't know. I mean, maybe they gave Bouzakis the weekend off before Christmas. Maybe Davino gets 5 dates. You want to keep him happy. I think it's I think you're taking the same side of the coin I took when, like, hey, so does Angelo Ferrari come out of redshirt, right? And your argument was they got a bunch of dudes there. It doesn't make sense. But now I'm on the opposite side. I'm on your side of the coin you were with Iowa. So I think you were right with Iowa, and I think that your same argument for Iowa is right for Ohio State, but we'll see. But Davino's going to be very good. They're going to have an interesting situation next year because
I think David's frozen for a minute.
moves up. One of those guys certainly good enough to. I'm not. You are. So, can you guys hear me now? Good. Anyway, so first world problems at Ohio State. There was a massive rumor circulating, and it was only a rumor, that Rocco Welsh was considering leaving Columbus for Stillwater. So that was a fun thing to talk about while I was in Stillwater. Rocco put out always a buck or something to that effect. So basically he's staying. I don't want to misquote his exact quote, but the 100%, the message was he's not leaving. And Tom Ryan put out an explanation that there was conversations about whether he was going to redshirt or wrestle, and he'd have to challenge off and all this other stuff. Was he going to go 74, 84? Without getting real deep into that, I think the most interesting thing is this. He felt unappreciated. Well, back in the day, it was too bad. Now it's like you can leave. So it's just a different world. Relationship management is really important. I think that's one of the many things I think Penn State does as well or better than anybody else in the country. So, but to go back, Meyer Shapiro, top end Meyer Shapiro's the only guy that wrestles with him, in my opinion, is Teamer. Like, he's better than Kasak, better than those other guys. I think by at least one, maybe two takedowns. I mean, concussions are weird though, right? Like, you can get hit one way kind of wonky, and maybe wonky's the wrong. You can get a head injury, and if you've had a previous concussion, it's dramatically worse than if you've never had one.
Yeah.
So, all right, GT, we're going to talk about a rule that only applies to you from the bringing guys out, this new JUCO rule. So the new rule is if you wrestle in JUCO, you still get 4 years of eligibility at a D1. I have not had time to process this yet. Okay, so we may talk about this more next week, and more kids are not missing the clearinghouse. I don't know if somehow everybody's got better counselors or if ACT's Mark's laughing, by the way, but that's theoretically a possibility. All these counselors did a better job with their worlds, but it may just be that, like ACTs and SATs have become less important with the clearinghouse or with these schools, and they're not making people take them, so they're only going off GPA. But what is interesting, and this is where I think it really comes into play, like, let's say you're the 31st, 32nd guy we'll just pick the top three schools: Penn State, Oklahoma State, Iowa. That school might convince you to go to junior college for a year if you're an incoming freshman. And actually, I didn't read the rule all the way through. I wonder if you I wonder if you can just go to JUCO after a year or 2 years at a D1. Because in the old days you couldn't. I wonder if you can now. Because if that's the case, JUCO nationals are going to be stupid good, and they're going to be stashing. There's going to be a stash. Like, Iowa will probably work with a school like Iowa Central. There will become a junior college in Pennsylvania. They're going to go get one. And then NEO would work with Oklahoma State as an example. So thoughts, boys? Any initial thoughts on this?
Well, this is a humongous bag of cats. So I don't think that it's anywhere close to being you just go to JUCO and you get 6 years. That is not the case. I think that what is happening for the one athlete that filed an injunction with the NCAA, they approved his waiver for 1 more year of eligibility. So this doesn't necessarily, I don't think this is a blanket statement that all JUCO athletes now have 2 more years of eligibility. just to do whatever they want with. So I want to make sure that, like, once again, we're not reporting this, and I don't think that that's the thing that we're trying to maybe suggest. I think it's just that there was a specific case for an athlete that wanted to have an additional year of eligibility that he was previously at a JUCO. And then basically based off, I think it's academic standards or something along those lines, he filed an injunction to be able to receive an additional year of eligibility to play football.
Well, here's the one that just popped up 3 hours ago. The NCAA Division I Board of Directors granted a waiver to permit student athletes who attended and competed at a non-NCAA school. Hold on. Just clicked over. For 1 or more years to remain eligible and compete in 25-26. If those students would have otherwise used their final season of competition during the 24-25 season. So that's something that just came out in the last 3 hours. Diego Pavia, I don't know if I'm saying his name right or wrong. If I do, I apologize. So, and this is the injunction GT that you are talking about. So bag of cats is the right word, right?
And I think that this is one of those things that, like, until there's an actual, like, this comes out and then everybody kind of falls in line with it, it's very difficult to really understand where the lay of the land will then go to, right?
Yeah.
So this is so much, I would say not necessarily dissimilar to NIL and all of the rules that applied for all the athletes when all of that came out, where, like, nobody really truly knew what it meant and how it was all going to work. And, you know, I just sometimes don't rush to understand exactly what it is until, like, I've seen what it will truly become. Because, you know, once again, the athletes, all of a sudden, you know, they're going to come back and do record. I don't know. It's just, there's too much for me to really wrap my head around with it only being whatever it is, 3-4 hours ago.
Yeah. Yeah. It's certainly something, though. I mean, based on Mark's experience as a head coach, my experience as an assistant coach, and your experience at a school that in all sports recruits junior college athletes, I'm sure, Grandview, it'll be interesting to see how this goes. So it is something to keep an eye on. It may end up being a big fat nothing, but it may end up being something. Mark, you've been surprisingly quiet. Go ahead.
Well, I think to give them an extra year if they went to a year of junior college, especially now that they're going to cap sports and only be allowed to have so many, I think you'd notice that junior college would, like you said, David, kind of go back to the way it was back in the day when, you know, you could, some of these kids couldn't pass clearinghouse to get in. Now I think it's, if you want the kid, you're going to get him in, period, for Division I now. So I think you'd see a lot of really good competition in junior college, and it gives the teams, the Division I teams, a chance to clear a few kids out and then bring those guys in that they want. So I think they're going to be placing them in specific places, if that's the, you know, has anything to do with it whatsoever. I hate the 30 rule for wrestling because you're preventing kids from living their dreams, whether they can make the team or not. Just being part of Penn State or Iowa or Oklahoma State or Iowa State, UNI. I mean, some of these kids are not going to be able to go there to these schools, and they're quality kids and they're smart kids, and they're not going to be able to compete in the sport. And I don't think that's right. I really don't. And I think you're going to see lawsuits saying you're preventing me from, you know, living my dream. Who are you to say that I can't wrestle there because there's a cap on the number of kids you can have on the team?
You know, Mark, I think based off of kind of what you've just discussed as, you know, like a roster cap situation, I think that there's a lot of different things that happen when it comes to capping participation or capping, you know, like having basically tryouts and even to be on a team like that, right? So I don't know where that's all going to go. We're going to find out real soon how that's all going to shake out and what teams are going to look like and who's going to be a part of it, or, you know, how many roster spots are available for certain things. But it's, you know, I think that there's other institutional issues that occur when it's like, well, hey, Penn State says that you only can have 30 people on the team. And it becomes an institutional policy. It's not necessarily a wrestling policy, but the institution says that same thing for tennis, or says the same thing for track and field. And it's like, well, it's just going to get really cutthroat in order to be able to participate at whatever said institution that you'd like to be able to participate at.
Well, here's the thing. They had an article on Dallas Clark. Now, people don't know who Dallas Clark is. He played for the University of Iowa. He was a preferred walk-on out of high school. He had played linebacker in high school. They converted him into a tight end. He went on and played for the Indianapolis Colts. Is basically one of the better tight ends that's ever played the game of football in professional football. And he was really good at Iowa. In the new rules, where they can only now have 102 football players on the team, so he would have never played at Iowa. He'd have never made it to the pros. He'd have never been able to live out a dream. And we all know that kids don't mature, all of them in high school. They mature in college. And if you don't get that opportunity to even be on a college team, you know, he would have never done what he did. And it's a shame if that happens.
There's one glitch. He might not have gone to Iowa, but somebody else would have put him on as one of their 105, theoretically. Don't know. Obviously, it's speculation. And back then it was 85. Now it's 105, I believe. I don't know, unless you've heard 102 separate as a separate number, but the number I'd heard was 105. But the crux of the argument is the same, I think, which is some of these guys, like, listen, I mean, we all know, like, Indiana, Iowa is tight end university, right? I mean, like, they just keep putting out freaking tight ends, like Nebraska's, you know, offensive tackle university. So I don't think we're going to fully understand this for a while. There were several Division I coaches there at my tournament this weekend, and roster cap's a thing. Like, roster cap is a thing that they're not happy about, and it's whether or not, Mark, like you're saying, like, they were a recruited walk-on, or theoretically, if they have 30 scholarships between NIL and good financial aid and 9.9, and they can fund 35 kids, well, they still got to cut 5 of them or hide them. And like one coach goes, well, we can just put them in our RTC. I go, they can't even. A kid who I know goes, if you're in the RTC, you're not even allowed to be in the wrestling facility at the same time as the team. You're not allowed to wrestle with the team. You don't get the same backpack as the team. You don't get the same shoes. And that's just like trying to convince somebody who lives back home you're still on the team that doesn't know how to get on the internet. I mean, you're not on the roster. You can't be on the roster. If a school lists 31 names on the roster, that is the very first sign that they are not in compliance. So that's going to be fascinating. I kind of want to close with where Grant and I was this weekend, and Merry Christmas. So give everybody a quick shakedown of what happened at Reno, GT.
Both Reno Tournament of Champions, there's a high school division for both men's and women's athletes that compete on the day before the collegiate tournament starts. And then the collegiate tournament is basically just, you know, an extension of like a Saturday tournament for a whole bunch of people to get matches in. So ended up being a really good showing for both the high school and the collegiate side. Reno runs always a good tournament. And then, of course, like my Grandview University team was out there, and we brought a lot of guys to compete. And we ended up winning the team title. I think we had 3 champs, multiple place winners, wrestled really good competition, got a chance to see a whole bunch of guys that we don't necessarily get to see on the West Coast, which is great. And, you know, it's just a really good college open. So,
well,
very cool to be a part of it.
And you're low keying it, but you mentioned before that you guys always take third out there. So, and you mentioned schedule, and there's a season and a reason for the season, and it's the season for a reason, however you want to say it. But Winning's always better than not winning. And if that's a tournament, if you've won more national titles than you have Reno titles, then winning Reno is a pretty big deal. So, sincere congratulations to you, Nick, Reedy, the other Grant, the whole crew, and obviously the kids that stepped out on the mat because they're the ones scoring the points. But that's a plateau up. I mean, now that's a box you can check that your program has done. So congratulations, sincerely.
Thank you.
So I had Hall of Fame duels this weekend in Stillwater. Kind of the highlights, the last match of each round. So the medal matches, all 5 matches came down to heavyweight, which was freaking awesome. And the team that won for 9th over 10th was going crazy, 7th over 8th, 3rd over 4th, all of them. So the final 2 teams were McCourt and Del Barton. McCourt wins. Del Barton didn't have Cam Santz, and he's a Fargo runner-up. So that's a big flip. It was a 9-point. It was 3 points going into heavyweight, and McCourt got a pin to make it 9. That makes it closer. They also had a guy with a broken nose, and they had a guy that had a diabetic attack. So they took 2 guys to the hospital and still had it narrowed down to 1 match. And Gabe Logan's out for the year. So taking nothing away from McCourt, McCourt has a path to number 1. The only thing they haven't won so far is Ironman, where they lost to Faith Christian. Here's an absolutely ridiculous stat. Either McCourt or Faith Christian will not win state this year. They are literally both in Class AA in the PIAA state tournament. And I guess theoretically that might be wrong. One could win individual and one could win dual state, and they would win 99.8% of every other state tournament in the country. They also have this wonky rule where they only wrestle 13 weights. So that screws some things up. McCourt will duel Sem, which is a massive part of the team race. Sem took 4th at Ironman, but didn't have Bazaka, so really probably 3rd. And then I'm told Powerade this weekend is going to be huge for the rankings. I was with Willie most of the weekend, which you guys can say a prayer for me that I survived that. But, he's obviously following those rankings really closely. I think the surprise of the tournament was Mass Perry. So we kind of seeded the tournament based off Ironman results. Everybody placed exactly where we had them except Mass Perry. And they were, I think, the 5 or the 6 seed and ended up finishing 3rd. So they beat Edmond North on criteria. Edmond North only beat Ponegantset 32-26. And then Mass Perry boat raced Ponegantset. So you kind of figure it's going to be a walk-off, and it was tied. It came down to Edmond in the difference in the matches was Edmond North had 2 majors, and Massillon Perry had a tech and a decision. So it's pretty far down the criteria list. So they have a really good dual meet team, man. And they're going to have a really good state tournament team. They might place 12 kids. They literally might place 12 kids in the Ohio State tournament. They just don't have I don't know if they have anybody ranked in the top 15 in the country, but they probably got 10 guys ranked in the top 60 in the country at their weight class, if I'm making any sense there. So Ethan Kyle did a great job as the host school. And then the normal names you always hear: Leroy Smith, Ed Gallegos, Jack Carnifex, Laura Hornacek. The referees did a great job. I did have the criteria, GT. You would have been proud of me. I had the criteria ready the minute the Mass Perry duel was over. I knew who won. And if the final match had been a tie, in case anybody wonders, McCourt would have won on the same thing. It was like a pin versus a tech and a major. So I think we had 4 number 1 kids in the country in the tournament.
Didn't one of them lose a match?
I don't think so. Who?
I thought one of Ohio State's studs got beat. It's
Ohio
going to Oklahoma State. He switched from what's his name? I thought he lost to the kid from McCourt.
Who, Vega?
No. 160, maybe. Miller?
This is terrible radio. Oh, yes, Cody Rutledge. Cody
Yeah.
Rutledge, Russell Melvin Miller. I don't think Cody Rutledge is the number one guy because he moved up a weight.
Okay. He was at his previous weight.
He was number one at 157, so I think we're both right.
Okay.
But him and Jeter are moving from 50 and 57 to 57 and 65. And then Ladarian's moving from 65 to 75. So, yes, the way I counted it, because I think the number one guys coming in were Ladarian and Rutledge and Bassett. And I don't know, it wasn't Villasenor. I can't think of it's not Sergio Vega, but that's how good it is. Like Jax Forrest, like those guys were all like 2s or 3s. You know, I mean, then you have the guys like the Casulas and the Aiden Thomases and the Sam Herrings. And I mean, a truckload of top 10 guys. PJ Terranova, Cam Science. Oh, Parrington. Parrington wanted to wrestle Melvin, and they flip-flopped him. They bumped Melvin for the duel to go 6'6" instead of we'll see who wins. And I guess they felt like if they didn't do it if they did a heads up, I think McCourt thought that Del Barton would win the other match. And that is one of the bad things about duels, right? Like if I don't think our best guy can beat GT, but I think he can beat the guy above GT, then we're gonna bump. So not necessarily guys hit, or individual tournaments guys hit. So, but I'll tell you, I'm kind of coming around the way of dual meets. Like they're fun, man. They're fun to watch. They're fun to commentate. Willie did the Irish goodbye, but he was back in the hotel room watching it and sending us data. And at 157, he goes, they're going to bump, and this duel is going to come down to heavyweight. That's a pretty good call at 157. So, but anyway, that's third year we've done that. Very happy that there was no super serious injuries, and we pretty much got in and out on time. So if you had told me 5 years ago I would be involved in running a tournament, I probably would have said you're crazy, but it's a pretty awesome experience. Okay. We will go wisest to dumbest. So we will go Mark, then Grant, then me in terms of wishing people Merry Christmas. Go ahead, Mark. The floor is yours.
Yeah, just all the people that listen to our podcast, I'd like to wish everybody a Merry Christmas. Safe travels on the road. It's going to be crazy this year. The number of people flying and driving. So take your time, get there safe, enjoy your time with your family and friends. And then to you guys, obviously, who I care about, I want you guys to have a great Christmas and enjoy your families and so on.
GT?
Yeah. Just want to say Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to everybody that's been our fan on the stream and or listening, however you get your podcasts. It's a great pleasure to be doing this with the guys. Have a lot of fun. Closing out here, one more episode for the 2024 calendar year. Enjoy your time with your family. Take some time off of work, rest, relax. Just enjoy just time away from things, and then get right back into it. And once again, one day after Christmas, get back in the wrestling room, start doing some stuff.
Get a jog in on Christmas morning or evening.
Yeah, there you
go. My favorite parts of this podcast are when Mark and I lose our mind about a ranking, and I peek over and I look at Grant's face like we're literally out of our minds. I had a bunch of people talk to me about the pod this weekend, and the recurring theme was, you guys seem like you're actually good friends. I go, we love each other. We respect each other as people, respect each other's opinions. We may fervently disagree about something, but the topic is never going to be more important than the relationships. And that's probably a good lesson for everybody in life to carry into 2025. Like, the people you care about, you can agree to disagree. Thankful to Gary Abbott and Rich Bender for giving us this platform. We all love wrestling. I know I say that there's very few things I can say for sure about all three of us, but I know we all love wrestling, and we love talking about it, being involved in it. And I will tell you this: if somebody had told me 15 years ago, one of my best friends and somebody I work with every week would be a guy from Iowa Central, I'd have told them they were out of their damn mind. So that's it says a lot about wrestling and how to bring people together. And Christmas about family. My mom and dad came down this weekend. I could sit on media row, but I sat with my mom and dad for the duel. That was really cool. Like GT, I know you do stuff like that with your dad and brother. You have access to certain places, and sometimes sitting 15 feet back is better because of who you're sitting with, and I know like you and Shane are like family. And so sometimes you get to do things like that. And my mom and dad were able to be on the floor for the tournament. So that was really cool. So just, I'll get to see family. Everybody, we thank you guys. It's great. Our numbers are good. We really appreciate it. Gary, thanks for putting us on the air. Merry Christmas to everybody. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening. We will see you all